There is a fruit that grows wild in the woods of this country. It tastes like the tropics, like a banana and a mango, and something sweeter caught in between. It is soft as custard, and you can eat it right out of the skin with a spoon. And I would wager the shirt off my back that you have never once tasted it. Not because it is rare. It grows wild across the whole eastern half of this land, from northern Florida all the way up into Canada. Your great-grandparents knew it by name. George Washington kept it on his table. The old tribes had a whole month of the year named after it. And then, inside the span of a single lifetime, this country forgot it. No blight ever killed it. No law ever banned it. The trees are standing out there this very morning, heavy with fruit, dropping it soft on the ground in woods where nobody walks anymore. It is called the pawpaw. The largest fruit this continent grows on its own, and just about the best-kept secret left in America. I am Elder Jacob. I farm the hill country of Lawrence County, Tennessee, and I have spent my life keeping the things this modern world was in too much of a hurry to throw away. This is one of the good ones. Everything I hand you today is true, and it is written down in the record for anybody who cares to go and look. And there is a man I have to tell you about before we are through. A man who went hunting for this fruit back when the whole country had left it for dead. What he pulled out of one overgrown field changed everything. And it is the reason you can put a tree of your own in the ground this very fall. So stay with me. Here is the first strange thing about the pawpaw. It is a tropical fruit that thrives in the cold. It belongs to the custard apple family. Nearly every cousin it has grows in the jungle, down where the frost never comes. Mangoes and their kin. But the pawpaw broke away from all of them and learned to live up here in the freezing north, where the ground goes hard and the winters do not want to quit. It is the only one of its whole family that can stand our cold. And yet it still carries that rich, tropical fruit its jungle cousins are known for. So if you ever dreamed of growing something tropical in a yard that sees real winter and told yourself it could never be done, hear me now. It can. This is the tree that does it. The fruit itself hangs in clusters, and the biggest kinds folks have bred can reach near 2 pounds apiece. You cut one open, and the flesh is a deep gold, smooth as pudding. Now, the tree keeps its own strange habits. In the early spring, before a single leaf has opened, it puts out dark maroon flowers, the color of old wine. And those flowers do not smell sweet. They give off a faint, spoiled smell on purpose. Because the pawpaw is not courting bees, it is calling in the flies. The flies do its pollinating, the way the beetles did for our grandfather's crops. And here is a gift the tree gives you for free. Deer will not touch it. Bugs leave it be. The whole plant carries a natural bitterness in its leaf, and its bark that pests cannot stomach. So the pawpaw stands out there season after season, needing no poison, no spray, nothing. There is one more thing that bitterness protects. A butterfly you have likely seen. But that is further along. First, you need to know who kept this fruit before us. Long before there was a grocery store anywhere on this continent, this fruit fed the people who were here first. The Shawnee, the Cherokee, and the other old nations knew the pawpaw better than we ever have. They ate it fresh off the ground in the fall, and they dried the sweet pulp into leathers they could keep clear through the winter. The Shawnee marked a whole stretch of their year as the pawpaw time. That is how central it was to the table, and they used more than the fruit. The tough inner bark of the tree, they twisted into strong rope, into fishing nets, into woven mats. Nothing wasted. When the first Spanish explorers pushed up the Mississippi, back in 1541, they wrote it down, native people growing this fruit along the riverbanks. That is the first time the pawpaw appears in a European record. The settlers who came after leaned on it too, as one of the last sweet things a family could gather before the cold shut everything down. And it climbed higher than that. Thomas Jefferson planted the pawpaw in his gardens at Monticello. George Washington grew them at Mount Vernon, and the man liked his pawpaw chilled, served cold as a dessert at the end of a meal. There is one story I come back to. In the fall of 1806, The explorers Lewis and Clark were near the end of their long journey home, worn down and out of provisions, close to starving in the western country. And what carried them through those last hard miles was wild pawpaw. Whole groves of it along the river, ripe and heavy, free for the taking. This fruit fed men who might otherwise not have made it back. Now, a fair word of caution wrapped inside that story. A couple of the men on that trip came down with swollen, streaming eyes on the pawpaw, and the old records call it the pawpaw sickness. The best guess is they handled the plant and rubbed their eyes, and the tree's own bitterness burned them, the way poison ivy will. The ripe fruit is a joy, but the tree can bite the careless hand. By the time the hard years of the Depression came, poor families across these hills were living on wild pawpaw again. They even called it the poor man's banana, because a store banana cost money nobody had, and the pawpaw cost nothing but a walk in the woods. They sang about it too. There was an old song folks sang that went, "Way down yonder in the pawpaw patch." So let me put the question to you plain. A fruit this good, this old, this woven all through the story of this country, from the First Nations to the Founding Fathers to the hungry years. How on earth did we forget it? The answer is not a mystery at all. It is money. Walk into any store and look at the fruit. Apples, oranges, bananas from the other side of the world. Every one of them chosen for one reason above all others. It ships. It sits in a warehouse for months, and it does not complain. The apple in your hand in the springtime was very likely picked the fall before. The pawpaw will do no such thing. A ripe pawpaw does not wait for you. Once it comes ready, the flesh turns from firm to soft custard in about 2 or 3 days, and the skin freckles up with dark spots. The taste underneath is still perfect. But a store will not sell a fruit with a spotted skin, and it cannot be shipped across the country before it goes to pudding in the crate. Its skin is thin and bruises if you look at it wrong. And the fruits on one single tree do not even ripen together. They come a few at a time, over weeks, so no machine can harvest them in one pass. A man has to walk the tree and gather what fell that morning. To a grocery chain, a fruit like that is worthless. It does not matter how fine it tastes. If it cannot ride a truck, it does not exist to them. So, they never sold it. And a fruit nobody sells is a fruit people slowly stop knowing. But that alone would not have buried it. The forgetting took one more push. For most of this country's life, folks kept a kitchen that did not lean on a store. They put food by. They dried it, cellared it, lived with the seasons. A fruit that came ripe in the fall and had to be eaten soon was no burden at all. That was just how food worked. Then the modern kitchen arrived. The cold box in the corner humming day and night. And with it came a new idea. That a family should have any fruit it wanted, any month of the year. A banana in January. An orange in the snow. Once folks expected that, a fruit that only came in the fall and would not keep started to look like a nuisance, so it fell off the table and off the mind. And there is a quieter loss underneath even that one. There were men near 100 years back who saw what the pawpaw could be. Back in 1916, a national contest went out to find the finest wild pawpaws in the land, and a handful of dedicated growers spent years hunting down the best trees and saving them. One man in particular built up a great collection, better than 60 kinds gathered in one place. And then he died in 1941. His collection got moved and left alone and swallowed up by weeds. The grafted trees, the ones carrying all those years of careful choosing, they died off one by one. The work was as good as gone. That is where the pawpaw sat, forgotten in the woods, forgotten in the kitchen, and its best bloodlines lost in an overgrown field. That is where it sat. Until one man went looking. Before I bring you his story, one plain word: farmer to farmer. A pawpaw you plant once, and it feeds you for 30 years. No bending required. But the everyday food, the greens and the herbs, that is the growing that puts a man on his knees in the mud. It did me, until I found a better way. I put all of it into one guide, the no-bend, No Neil garden. The whole Amish raised bed method, built up to standing height, so you never wreck your back or your knees again. The code is on your screen. Point your phone at it, and it is yours. Now, the man who saved the pawpaw. His name is Neil Peterson. Back in 1975, he was walking a wild grove along a riverbank in West Virginia, and he tasted a pawpaw for the first time in his life. It stopped him cold. Here was a fruit better than half of what sat in the grocery store, growing wild and unwanted at his feet. And the question would not leave him alone. Why had nobody ever made something of this? Why did the whole country walk past it? So, he went digging. Not in the dirt, in the records. He found the story of that old contest from 1916. He traced the names of those forgotten growers, the men who had saved the finest trees and then passed on. And he tracked down that great lost collection, the one that got swallowed by weeds after its keeper died. And here is the part that gives me chills every time. The grafted trees were dead, sure enough, but the seedlings that had come up around them from seed those prize trees had dropped, those were still alive, still standing in that overgrown ground. The bloodline was not gone. It had been waiting in the earth all those years for somebody to come back for it. Peterson gathered the seed. He gathered what else still survived. And he planted a trial of near 1,500 trees and gave his life over to the work of it. Out of all of them, he chose the very best. And after decades of patience, he brought forward 7 fine varieties that carry his name to this day. That one man pulled the pawpaw back from the edge. And he was not the last. In 1990, a university down in Kentucky started a pawpaw program of its own, and it has grown into the great center for this fruit anywhere in the world. By 1994, the government named it an official keeping place for pawpaw stock. And today it guards better than 2,000 different trees, gathered from 17 states. Men and women in white coats, doing for the pawpaw what nobody had done in 100 years. There are festivals now. Whole crowds gathering in the fall to taste the finest fruit and crown the best of the year. The fruit that this country left for dead is not dead at all. It is coming back, and that is where you come in. Because here is the truth about this rediscovery. It does not happen in a laboratory. It happens in dooryards. In back corners of ordinary gardens, one tree at a time, planted by folks like you who decided to be part of bringing it home. So, let me tell you how to do it right and save you the mistakes. First, and this is the one that trips up most everybody, you cannot plant just one. The pawpaw will not fruit off its own pollen. It needs a partner. So you plant at least 2 trees, and they have to be 2 different kinds, not 2 cuttings of the same one, 2 different varieties, near enough that the flies can carry pollen from one to the other. Plant one alone and you will wait forever for fruit that never comes. Second, buy grafted trees of a named variety. Do not start from a seed you found. A grafted tree gives you good fruit in about 3 to 5 years. A seedling can make you wait 5 to 9, and it may turn out a disappointment since seed runs wild and true to nobody. Pay for the named tree. It is worth every dollar. Third, remember this is a child of the deep woods. For its first couple of years, a young pawpaw wants shade, not blazing sun, so give it a little cover early on. After that, it wants full light to fruit well. And it wants deep, rich ground that drains. It will not abide soggy roots sitting in water. And when the flowers come, if you want a heavy crop, do what the growers do. Take a small, soft brush and carry the pollen from one tree's bloom to the other yourself. A few minutes of work for a bushel of fruit? One more thing. You do not even have to plant to taste one this year. If you have got a wooded creek bottom near you, walk it in the early fall. Look up. Those clusters may already be hanging there, wild and free, the same as they hung for the people who came before us. Think on what nearly happened here. A fruit that fed the First Nations of this land, that sat on Washington's table, that carried starving men home, that kept poor families alive through the hardest winters this country ever saw. We very nearly let it slip away for good, not to disease, not to disaster. We almost lost it to nothing but forgetting. because it would not fit on a truck. That is the quiet danger of this modern age. It does not burn the old things down. It just stops needing them and lets them fade out in a weedy field where no one looks. But a thing is only lost for as long as nobody remembers it. One man remembered. Now a whole country is starting to. And a tree in your ground this fall is your name added to that list. So, plant the pawpaw. 2 of them, side by side. And in a few short years, you will hand your grandchildren a taste of the tropics grown in your own cold yard off a tree as old as America itself that almost nobody else alive has ever tasted. If this stirred something in you, tap that like and subscribe so the next of these old lost treasures finds its way to you. Because there is another one out there. A little berry the old folks swore was finer than any blueberry. But that is a story for next time. Until then, this is Elder Jacob. Keep your hands in the good earth